I'd like to welcome you to the 2012 Tetsuo and Najita Distinguished Lecture. I'm Michael Berdash, and I'm here on behalf of my colleagues from the Japan Committee at the Center for East Asian Studies, who are the primary sponsor of today's lecture. I'd like to thank our co-sponsors for the lecture, particularly International House and its Global Voices program. And I'd also like to thank the staff at the Center for East Asian Studies, Ted Foss, Teresa Couch, and especially Sarah Earhart, who've done all the work in making this event possible. This is the 5th Najita Distinguished Lecture. Previous speakers in this series have included the philosopher Takahashi Tetsuya, the intellectual historian Koyasu Nobokuni, the novelist and Nobel laureate Oe Kenzaburo, and several others. The videos of several of the previous lectures are available on the website of the Center for East Asian Studies. I'd invite you to take a look at those. The series is named in honor of Professor Tetsuo Najita, the Robert S. Ingersoll Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus in the Departments of History and East Asian Languages and Civilizations here at the University of Chicago. Professor Najita joined the faculty of the University of Chicago in 1969, and in addition to his extraordinary scholarship and teaching, served the university in many capacities during his long career, including as director of the Center for East Asian Studies, as master of the Social Science Collegiate Division, and as chair of the History Department. Professor Najita's many publications on Japan's early modern and modern intellectual history include the book Harake and the Politics of Compromise in 1967, which was awarded the John King Fairbank Prize in East Asian History. His book Visions of Virtue, the Kaitokudo Merchant Academy of Osaka in 1987, won the Yamagata Banto Prize. Since his supposed retirement in 2002, Professor Najita has continued his work. In 2008, he published a wonderful new book in Japanese on the topic of doing intellectual history. And in 2009, the University of California Press published his most recent monograph, Ordinary Economies in Japan, A Historical Perspective, 1759 to 1950. And one of the great pleasures we have in doing this event is we get to welcome back to campus two of our favorite people in the world, Tetsuo and Eleanor Najita, who are here today. So please join me in that. I now have the pleasure of turning the podium over to another one of my colleagues who pretends to have retired, Norma Field, who's inherited the position as Robert S. Ingersoll Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus in Japanese Studies, and who supposedly retired last year, but we keep seeing her around, and she seems to be quite active. So she's going to introduce our distinguished speaker. Norma?
Thanks, Mike. It's truly a pleasure to be here with all of you. I know I don't have enough distance, so you can't really appreciate my appearing here. But it is such a pleasure to welcome Professor Igarashi on this occasion. You get some sense of his work from your program, those of you who have this one sheet that you may have picked up, I hope, in entering here. His great range of scholarship as an intellectual historian and as a political scientist, you get some idea of from that. And of course, he's the author of numerous books and editor of many. He is has headed and heads a number of important groups, political science groups, peace and community studies groups, Asian Studies Frontier groups. He's someone who starts a lot of things. It's a special pleasure for me to have this chance to introduce him because he has forged a special relationship between the University of Chicago and his institution of Rikkyo, and has hosted generations of University of Chicago students, both undergraduates and graduates, and facilitated the research of numbers of faculty, including me. So we're all in his debt. I also want to emphasize that, well, in 1985, it was just reminded, in 1985, he organized a joint symposium, mostly of U of C faculty with some others from the United States, like historian Carol Luck at Columbia, with Rikkyo scholars and others. Just reminded me there were 2 Nobel laureates in this group, Professor Nambu, what is he, a meteorologist from Chicago, and Oe Kenzaburo. In that group, this is in 1985, and that book became a bestseller of sorts for the Iwanami Publishing House when it was really in dire straits, as publishing is once again today. So these kinds of events were not so common back then. He's also a pioneer in fostering ties between Japanese and other Asian scholars. So it wasn't just that his eyes were turned towards Chicago and the US, but also towards Asia, to Thai scholars, Indonesian scholars. He was a professor at Jyosei, visiting professor at Jyosei University in Korea, and one of his publications is on the democratization of Korea. The first time I heard him speak in Chicago, I believe he was speaking about Emilio Zapata and the Zapatistas in the Mexican Revolution. So I hope that gives you a sense of his range. I want to read just a bit. This is on the abstract dry side, but I think it's important. It says in a nugget what kind of political scientist he is. It's from the foreword to his major book on politics in Japan from Iwanami, which came out in 2010. This is a rough and ready translation, but this is how it goes. What characterizes this book, that it has not limited its scope to party politics or the bureaucracy. I'm sure you all know that the bureaucracy in Japan is enormously powerful. So on one hand, party politics, on the other, bureaucracy, has not limited its scope to these 2 players, but rather extends it to the entirety of Japanese society. It seeks to capture the structure and dynamism of Japanese politics in a time of transformation by also examining the impact of these other dimensions of Japanese society on party politics and the bureaucracy. What are these other dimensions? He's paid a lot of attention to citizens' movements, to women in electoral politics, as well as in citizens' movements, also regional politics. And these are very important aspects. He's always been looking at the relationship, both between Japan and the Asian region and the Asian Pacific region, but also within Japan, too. Today's talk that I'm so glad he has chosen for us is an updated version of the final lecture he gave before retiring from Rikkyo University on December 17th of last year. And I found a blog by, characteristically, a woman politician in a local assembly in one of the metropolitan prefectures. She had been a student at Rikkyo just as Mr. Igarashi started as an assistant. She points out some of the differences, which I very much associate with the kind of presence Mr. Igarashi had with his distinguished colleagues there, such as the late political scientist Takabatake Mitsutoshi and Kurihara Akira, for example. But she says when she was a student, when she became a student there, only 10 out of 500 students in the law faculty were women. That 1/3 of the audience today, she said, are women. That there are many adult students, that is to say, that Rikkyo really encouraged the participation of non-conventional students and made them formally a part of what went on at that university. And this politician, this woman on her blog says, there's so much I want to retain from his final lecture there, not his final lecture ever, but his final lecture as Professor Rikkyo, that I'm going to give you an outline of the lecture, and it's a very fine one. And through it, we can see why this topic of the nuclear disaster, draws together all the threads of his interest in his career as an academic specialist in politics. That, again, it's the operation of politicians and the bureaucracy in Tokyo and its relationship to local politics. There are 2 specific things in that blog, in the outline, that probably Mr. Igarashi won't touch upon today, that illustrate how his lifelong concerns come together by examining nuclear energy in Japan. I think, by the way, that Japan has changed fundamentally since March 11th in 2011, and I think that's probably a shared recognition and maybe a reason why he chose this topic for us. One is also the subject of his book. Prime Minister Tanaka Kakue, some of you may remember him, kind of just a powerhouse of a politician, a person who brought a nuclear power plant to his home prefecture of Niigata on the sort of the northwestern side of Japan, and was dethroned in a way through a huge bribery scandal involving the United States and Lockheed and weapons. So all the things that, in a sense, make kind of organized Japanese politics in some way, relationship to the United States, money, what you can bring, pork barrel politics, etc. So Tanaka Kakue, The Long Goodbye, is the title of a book by Mr. Igarashi in 1995. And the other is a local referendum in Maki Township in Niigata, now absorbed into Niigata City, in 1996. Actually, this is a local referendum that managed to prevent the siting of a nuclear power plant. And that local assembly, 1/3 of the people, the assembly people are women. Now, Niigata happens to be where Mr. Igarashi is from. And so now I want to share with you, before turning to his talk, a story he shared with me that I haven't forgotten, probably from 20 years ago. And it's about the last, as he was finishing middle school and going on to high school, he says his classroom teacher asked all the students in his class who were not going on to high school to raise their hands. And maybe 1/3 of the class raised their hands. And the teacher said to the whole class, those of you who didn't raise your hands, I want you to remember that every single classmate who raised his or her hand really would want to go to high school. Wants to go to high school, they cannot. This is in the period of the beginning of high growth economics, the so-called industrial, the recovery of Japan. So these middle school grads were being sent out to Tokyo on a night train, and the whole class went out to see them off. And so think graduation season is March, so Niigata would still be very, very chilly around midnight. So think of these middle school, young people who have finished middle school and are seeing the classmates who are being seen off, the classmates who are privileged are able to go on to high school. And they actually, as you may have seen in old-fashioned steamers, right? You hold streamers, and the people on the boat hold one, and you hold it. They actually did that, I think, with a train, so that you're waving. Everyone's crying and waving goodbye to the middle schoolers who are going off to contribute to the industrialization, recovery of Japan. Many of them come back, I also learned from Mr. Igarashi, not having adapted to life in Tokyo, and come back to hometowns where there are no jobs waiting for them, which is also the structure which created the 54 nuclear power plants in earthquake-prone Japan. So I think Mr. Igarashi, who's Rikkyo University, as those of you who've been there know, very fashionable part of Tokyo. And the students look fashionable, and there's a huge pine tree in the middle of campus that's lit up for Christmas. So in the heart of that fashionable academic environment, I'm pretty sure he's never forgotten that moment from his own growing up years, and that pulls all the threads together of his intellectual and human concerns. So with that, I want to turn the podium over to Mr. Igarashi, so let's welcome him back to Chicago.
Thank you very much, Norma-san. Yeah. I'm honored to be able to give the 2012 Tetsuo Najita Distinguished Lecture in Japanese Studies. And I would like to express my sincere gratitude for this chance to come back and speak at the University of Chicago, where I was a visiting researcher, a fellow, 30 years ago. Today I'm going to be talking about the problems with Japan's political structure with regard to the nuclear power. This March, I retired from Rikkyo University, as she said, where I had worked for 34 years, and I chose this topic for a special final lecture to close my teaching, but not research career. The nuclear power issue is a critically important one, currently shaking Japanese society. Newspaper Newspapers devoted a great deal of space thereto following the accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station. And the large bookstores set up sections dedicated to the nuclear power problem. When public opinion polls show complete elimination of nuclear plants in Japan to be the wish of the majority, Japan's political parties could not longer turn a deaf ear. The Democratic Party decided that it could not win the upcoming election without pledging to move Japan completely away from nuclear power by the 2030s. And the government as a whole adopted that goal as well, but the Democratic administration is currently stalled due to the pressure from the business community and the US government. The US government has put continuous pressure on Prime Minister Noda's administration due to the fact that decision by the Japanese government to completely abandon nuclear power would adversely affect the US nuclear power industry, and the fact that plutonium would start piling up and could be put to military use. Every Friday evening, people who had developed feelings of mistrust due to the government's haste at the beginning, bringing plants back online after the disaster, or feel that 2030s are too late of a target by which to shut down Japanese nuclear plants, demonstrate at the Prime Minister's residence. これできますか？できると思う。OK。あ、でもそれちょっと時間がないと思いますね。はい。Yeah, demonstration not so clear, but demonstration in front of the Prime Minister's residence, and in every Friday evening, even now. Please join us when you come to Japan, Tokyo. What Fukushima lost? As many of you know, the prefecture of Fukushima is located in the northern part of the island of Honshu, at the southern end of the Tohoku region. Fukushima is home to vibrant agriculture, fishing, and manufacturing industry, and its population is a little under 2 million. In the late 1950s, having missed out of Japan's period of rapid economic growth, and as the shift from coal to oil led to the decline of the Joban coal mine that had been the mainstay of Fukushima's industry, Fukushima found itself looking for a replacement industry. TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, happened at the time to be searching for a site for a nuclear power plant, and the location of a former Army airfield of the coast of Fukushima drew their attention. The first unit came online in 1971, with five more going into operation before the decade was out. Together, we constituted the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station. It should be noted that this plant was built by the Tokyo Electric Power Company in the region supplied by the Tohoku Electric Power Company, not in its own distribution region, i.e. the Tokyo metropolitan area or the broader Kanto region. To this day, TEPCO has never built a nuclear plant in its own power distribution region. One of the reasons that this plant was built in the remote part of the Fukushima prefecture is that TEPCO deemed it necessary to isolate the plant site from highly populated areas as much as possible, so as not to inflict a major disaster upon the surrounding population in the event of the atmospheric release of radioactive materials due to the catastrophic accident at the reactor facility. Following the Tohoku earthquake on March 11, 2011, it took some time for the fact that explosion had occurred at the plant to reach the resident of the area. When the government issued an evacuation order, conflicting instructions were given over emergency radio system, and the road to the evacuation site became completely gridlocked, plunging the region around the plant into chaos. Disaster drills has been held, but only as formalities, and in the end, did not help. The speedy SPEEDI network that had been developed at a great cost to provide information about the movement of radioactive material did not work. Even the government did not receive that information, although later it came to light that the US military did. Had this information been known, the number of people exposed to radiation could have been reduced. As a result of the tsunami and the nuclear plant accident, 1,780 Fukushima residents lost their lives. 181 went missing. 16,726 homes were completely destroyed. There were also many who were unable to search for missing family members due to the evacuation order issued because of the plant accident. Unable to return home, residents of town and villages in the radioactively contaminated region around the plant were scattered not only across Fukushima, but all over Japan, from Hokkaido to Okinawa. A total of 46,295 people ended up evacuating to other prefectures. There were also those who died in the process of evacuation, and others who lost all hope for the future and took their own lives. Manufacturing operations shut down or moved to other prefectures. Some farms were contaminated with radioactively, and those that found consumers unwilling to buy agriculture products from Fukushima. A great number of Fukushima residents lost their livelihood. Most heart-wrenchingly, extremely high level of thyroid abnormalities have been found in Fukushima children, and cysts that could lead to breast cancer have been found in elementary and middle school girls. In this regard, Fukushima's situation is said to be even worse than Chernobyl was. The serious accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station showed Japan that there is nothing safe about nuclear power. Some argue that it's a ghost town in Fukushima. Some argue that the problem was Japan's technological prowess not being up to the task. Yet others, including me, feel that root cause of the accident was Japan's falling into the traps of structure of deceit, the myth of safety, which naively assured the Japanese people that their country's nuclear power plants were safe. Second, the structure of the myth of safety, the formation of the nuclear power village. There was no small account of resistance to the idea of nuclear energy in Japan. Japan, having been subjected as it was to the use of nuclear weapons in the World War II. In December 1953, as the US was trying to bring other countries onto its side of the Cold War by providing technologies related to nuclear energy, President Eisenhower gave a speech called Atoms for Peace to the General Assembly of the UN. It was of particular strategic importance for the US that Japan participate, given Japan's status as one country that had suffered a nuclear attack. The CIA focused its attention on Matsutaro Shoriki, who at the time was the owner of the Yomiuri Shimbun and the president of the Nippon Television, a man with both media and political influence. Shoriki pushed for the use of nuclear energy in Japan in order to further his own political ambition to become a prime minister. In addition to the Shoriki, an ambitious young politician by the name of Yasuhiro Nakasone also played a central role in bringing nuclear power to Japan. Nakasone used ideological differences to push aside the Japanese socialist and the communist parties, which opposed the development of nuclear power. In 1955, Nakasone became the chairman of the Joint Committee of Atomic Energy in Japan Diet, and hurried to make a spot on the committee for the popular Hideki Yukawa, whose receipt of Nobel Prize in Physics had given hope to post-war Japan. Yukawa joined the committee together with other physicists such as Shoichi Sakata. At the time, there was a feeling among scientists in Japan that as one country that suffered a nuclear attack, Japan had a special prerogative and responsibility with respect to the peaceful use of nuclear power. Yukawa and others felt that three basic principles were needed for the peaceful use of nuclear power, that such use be public, democratic, and independent. However, before long, protesting the fact that the debate on the issue of safety was being held behind closed door, Yukawa and other physicists who urged prudence in developing nuclear power resigned from the committee. With them gone, engineering-leaning scientists took the lead, although the real power was held by the Liberal Democratic Party, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MITI, and the power companies. Within these organizations, expressing doubt about the safety of nuclear power was not permitted, resulting in a cloistered nuclear power village. Any researcher who said or did something indicating dissent would be shunned and ostracized. For example, Hiroaki Koide at the Kyoto University. He came to University of Chicago last May, I think. He presented a good example, blocked from the career advancement and denied research funding, which was controlled by the rulers of the nuclear power village. Koide was shut away in the cramped laboratory. He bore the discrimination, adorning the wall of his lab with a photograph of Shozo Tanaka, who 100 years before had fought financiers and Meiji government over population from the Ashio copper mine. Why the myth of safety was necessary? The first reason that the nuclear power village needed to spread the nuclear power is safe myth is that Japan is a very earthquake-prone country. As you can see from this map. Okay. I need a map here. You can see from this map, Japan is one of the few places in the world where this blue one is earthquake area, earthquake-prone area. And red one is the nuclear power facilities. Okay, that only the problem is the west coast here is overlapped, and Japan is totally overlapped, and the other places like this. It's and in Europe, they located the nuclear power facilities outside of the earthquake-prone area. Okay. Fukushima Daiichi, in fact, was built in an area that endure earthquakes at a frequency that is high even for Japan. Furthermore, since nuclear plants need water for cooling, Japan's plants are built in a coastal area where large earthquakes can cause tsunamis. Nuclear power plants in Japan are thus constantly exposed to this double peril. Unsurprisingly, this makes nearby residents uneasy. The myth of safety was necessary to dispel this unease. Reason number two involves the accident that kept occurring. After every accident, Japan's power companies would take refuge in the myth of safety, with no soul searching or sufficient review. After the 3 Mile Island accident in 1979, they said this model was one different from the plants in Japan, and the American plant operators didn't know what they were doing. After the Chernobyl accident in 1986, they said Japanese people are simply more capable. So 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl led to a shutdown and the construction of new nuclear plants in the US and Europe. Japan kept right on building. In September 1999, when a critical accident at a facility operated by the nuclear fuel processing company, JCO, in Ibaraki Prefecture, the south of the Fukushima Prefecture, that resulted in the death of 2 workers and the evacuation of a large number of nearby residents. The president of JCO expressed his heartfelt apology that an accident which should not have been allowed occurred. The white paper on nuclear safety prepared by Japan Nuclear Safety Commission the following year admitted that baseless myth of safety had been created from a wish for absolute safety. However, problems and accidents continued. In 2004, an accident at a nuclear power plant in Mihama in the Fukui Prefecture, facing to the Sea of Japan, claimed lives of the 5 workers. There were also cover-up particular important one happening in 2000 when inspection records were falsified to hide accident and damage at the Fukushima Daiichi and Daini plant. Whistleblower reported that cover-up, but Japan's regulatory agency responsible for ensuring nuclear safety, the Nuclear and Industry Safety Agency, sit on that report for 2 full years. They also informed TEPCO of the whistleblower report. When these events came to light, the Fukushima Daiichi plant was stopped and TEPCO's president resigned, as did as an advisor by the name of Gaishi Hiraiwa, who had in the past served as chairman of the Japan Business Federation, or Keidanren, which occupied a central position in Japan's business community. The increasingly governor of Fukushima, Eisaku Sato, clashed fiercely with TEPCO and meet his successor, the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI. If, as Governor Sato advocated, through inspection and renovation has then been performed, the 2011 disaster could probably have been avoided. Sato, however, suddenly found himself arrested on a peculiar bribery charge with an alleged bribe amount of 0 yen. The case is still ongoing in Japan's Supreme Court. There are plenty of other examples of the TEPCO putting profit first and postponing repair with full knowledge of danger, including some directly connected to the 2011 disaster. In 1993, the Nuclear Safety Commission judged that station broke out needed to be taken into consideration and suppress some of the relevant documents. In 2006, the possibility of massive tsunami was considered, but no precautionary measures were taken to protect against one. The structure of the nuclear power village. The village is the driving force. The nuclear power village is an aggregation of organizations with a myth of safety as its ideology. It includes METI, the Liberal Democratic Party, the electric utility and the nuclear power industry, academia, the mass media, and the judiciary, among others, and the source of its power is the power companies' money. Japan's power companies each have a monopoly of both power generation and distribution in one of 10 regions, from Hokkaido to Okinawa, with only Okinawa Electric Power Company having no nuclear plant. This regional monopoly system was born during the World War II, when electrical power was placed under the control of the state to allow the state to fully mobilize its resources. It managed to remain in place in post-war Japan. Not only Japan's power companies exempted from the market competition by the regional monopoly system, they are allowed to use a special cost accounting method to determine electric rate. These rates are based on a so-called combined cost, consisting of expenses such as depreciation and operating expenses, plus a certain amount of profit. The amount of profit is determined by multiplying a fixed profit rate by a monetary amount that includes a value of a fixed asset, the cost of nuclear fuel used, and R&D investment. Consequently, the more they increase their fixed asset and the more they spend on nuclear fuel and R&D, the more the profit they make. In an inversion of how normal companies work, spending money or lavishly produced advertisement and funding for important nuclear university researchers, for example, actually increase their profit. This is what allows power companies to funnel large amount of money to a variety of so-called investment. Collusive relationship with METI. Simply put, Japan's power companies are run as a private corporation, but in accordance with the national policy. This arrangement may have been useful during the energy shortage in the early post-war period, but since then, the collusive relationship between the power companies and the METI has been significantly detrimental to Japan. even since 1962, when a former vice minister of what was then MITI became a vice president and a member of the board at TEPCO. There has been almost uninterrupted pattern of METI higher up, such as Director General of ANRE, the Agency of National Resource and Energy, retiring. That is, taking advantage of Japan's amakodari to assume executive position at TEPCO. At present, one of the 6 vice president posts at TEPCO is effectively reserved for METI alumni. And a total of 45 METI alumni have been given important position at the other 9 major power companies after leaving the ministry. Involvement in politics. To protect the status quo of the nuclear power village, TEPCO and the other power companies have thrown around huge sums of money, such as large donation to the long-ruling Liberal Democratic Party. In 1974, an independent woman Diet member named Fusae Ichikawa criticized the president of TEPCO, saying that the use of consumers' money for political contribution does not benefit the public utility. The power companies ostensibly refrained from the political contribution after that, but then it came to light that they had paid the LDP 1 billion yen, 12.7 million US dollar in advertisement fee for advertising fee for advertisement placed in the LDP's party newspaper. Small one. The president of TEPCO at the time was Gaishi Hiraiwa, mentioned earlier, who was then the chairman of the Keidanren. He resigned the chairmanship and expressed his remorse. However, the power companies now make political contribution by purchasing tickets to politician fundraising parties, which, when purchased in small batches and less likely to be noticed, TEPCO has contributed a total of approximately 50 million yen, 640,000 US dollars in this way. Also on the premise that there is nothing wrong with individual contribution. Board members make contribution at the behest of their companies. A total of 912 board members from 9 power companies have contributed a total of 115.67 million, 1.5 million US dollars to the LDP. Also, according to the report from the People's Political Association, which manages the LDP's fundraising, 72.5% of all individual contribution to the LDP in financial year 2009 came from board members and alumni of those 9 power companies. The TEPCO also helped its former vice president, Tokio Kano, win a seat in the upper house of the Diet as an LDP proportional representation candidate. Kano raised a large amount of money through fundraising parties and distributed it throughout the LDP. In 2010, Kano left the Diet and returned to the TEPCO in an advisory capacity. And after the accident at the Fukushima plant, he caused a stir by defending TEPCO by saying that some researchers contend that low doses of radiation are actually good for the health. Perhaps people are overacting. Money funding to academia. In order to suppress criticism of nuclear power, using pretexts such as endowments and funding for commissioned and joint research, billions of yen flow from the power companies and other nuclear power-related companies to national universities engaged in the nuclear power research, such as Kyoto University, over 3.3 billion yen from financial year 2006 to 10. The University of Tokyo, 2.56 billion over the same time period, and the Tokyo Institute of Technology over the 1.67 billion yen. Some of this funding is available for use at the discretion of certain researchers, many of whom are, for example, members of advisory bodies for ensuring the safety of nuclear power. It's difficult to imagine that a researcher who is continually receiving money from nuclear power-related companies would create a regulation or make a decision that is disadvantageous to those companies. It's not as though those companies are wasting their money. On the other hand, like the previous mentioned Hiroaki Koide at Kyoto University, those who stayed from the norms of the nuclear power village are not only denied funding and career advancement, but are also subject to the derision by the pro-nuclear camp at conference and symposia. Controlling local politics and industry. Subsidies are provided to local governments that allow the construction of nuclear plants, a system started by the LDP leader Kakuei Tanaka. In 1969, Tanaka invited TEPCO to build a nuclear plant in Kashiwazaki, the biggest nuclear plant in the world. Part of the electoral district, and in 1974, he passed a series of laws that, among other things, provide a generous subsidy to local government that host a nuclear plant. Despite trepidation about the danger of nuclear plants, the populated municipalities that had been left behind by economic development would agree to host nuclear plants in order to rehabilitate themselves physically and, most of all, to create job opportunity for young people. The electrical utility industry also gives a large amount of money to local government that host nuclear plants. Over the last 20 years, TEPCO, for example, has given an annual average of roughly 2 billion yen to the relevant local government in the 3 prefectures that host its nuclear plants for a total of over 40 billion yen, close to the 51 million US dollars. Also, the majority of the over 50 billion yen, 64 million US dollars, in anonymous donation that have been received over a similar time frame by Fukui Prefecture, which hosts 15 nuclear plants. It was called Genpatsu Ginza. Unfortunately, it is believed to have come from the power companies that run those plants. These large donations and subsidies are like addictive drug to the receiving local government, which end up spending recklessly and then host more nuclear power. Top executives of power companies control local economies by chairing regional economic federation, which partition Japan among the same boundaries as the power companies themselves. The power companies also exert a strong influence on local politics through campaign contributions. For example, the chairman of the organization that manages fundraising for Governor Harumi Takahashi of Hokkaido, who is herself an alumni of METI's prosecutor, is a chairman of the board of the Hokkaido Electric Power Company, or HEPCO, The members of the board of HEPCO make political contribution as individuals, and HEPCO sets aside a lucrative post for alumni of the Hokkaido prefectural government. After the Fukushima disaster, Governor Takahashi restarted the Tomari nuclear plant, which had been shut down for inspection over the opposition of her constituents. Similar patterns can be seen in other prefectures that host nuclear plants, such as Fukui and Saga. Labor union money flowing to Democratic Party Diet member. Labor Union Federation make up the largest part of the support base of the current ruling party, the Democratic Party of Japan, DPJ, and the Federation of Electric Power Related Industry Workers Union of Japan, Denryoku Soren, is a core of such federation. Denryoku Soren has two upper house Diet members who in turn use the ample fund provided by the Denryoku Soren to influence DPJ Diet members. They also succeeded in working the export of nuclear energy technology into the DPJ platform. Following the Fukushima disaster, they have maintained that TEPCO bears no responsibility. In the 2010 Upper House Diet election, Denryoku Soren endorsed 47 DPJ candidates, 24 of whom were elected, including Azuma Koshiishi, now the General Secretary of the DPJ. Silencing the media, maintaining the myth of nuclear safety required bringing the mass media on the board, and finances of media companies depend on the advertising revenue. Due to the previously mentioned system, whereby the more power companies spend on the advertising, the more profit they make. They make ideal advertising client and must be treated well. Criticism of nuclear power is impossible. It is especially taboo for a television station, which are very dependent on the advertising revenue, to report criticism regarding or the danger of nuclear power. The previously newspaper didn't openly criticize nuclear power earlier either. But after Fukushima, the Tokyo Shimbun took the initiative and the details about the accident at the plant and articles about ending Japan's reliance on nuclear power. This commentary was welcomed by the newspaper's readers. The Tokyo Shimbun seemed to have been able to venture to do so due to its comparatively low reliance of advertisement from power companies. Other newspapers then had no choice but to follow the suit, and before long, as though the floodgate had been opened, newspapers were full of articles about nuclear power. As for television commercials, as for the television, commercial stations have kept comparatively quiet, but NHK has stepped up to the plate. Like with Tokyo Shimbun, this is probably because NHK does not rely on advertisement revenue. The publishing companies, answering what they saw as a public need, began to put out many volumes on the nuclear issue. For report of the causes of the accident, 4 accident investigation committees were formed by the Diet, the national government, the private sector, and TEPCO to investigate the cause of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station accident, and each reported on its result. The TEPCO report was nothing but self-justification, and concluded that the cause was a tsunami that exceeded the design assumption. The diet investigation, however, noted that the possibility that it was the earthquake, not the tsunami, that caused the accident. If this latter reason is the case, that would mean that every single one of Japan's nuclear plants is in danger of a major accident, since all of Japan is highly earthquake prone. Okay. Okay. 大丈夫だろう。The Diet and the government committee called the Fukushima disaster a man-made disaster that could have been prevented. For example, they pointed at TEPCO at having neglected to take appropriate measure despite having been aware of the possibility of the large-scale tsunami. The private sector committee concluded that the myth of safety, which had been created for the benefit of people living in area near nuclear plants, ended up pervading their very organization that were supposed to ensure nuclear safety, during their instinct. The private sector committee also noted that structure of collusion in the nuclear power village rendered it unable to fulfill its oversight function. However, none of the investigation committees were able to examine the plant site itself. TEPCO refused to allow them for a reason including safety, and the committee did not push any further. Some of the facts regarding the causes of the accident remain in TEPCO's hands and are not yet fully understood. As such, the government decision in June 2012 to restart Unit 3 and 4 at the Kansai Electric Power Company's Oi nuclear power station in Fukui Prefecture created a great deal of apprehension and backlash. 4. Can Japan become nuclear free? Local movement. The Fukushima disaster busted the myth of safety for many Japanese. The people of Fukushima have made poignant appeals such as "Give us our hometown back," and the same mistake must never happen again. Fukushima's prefecture assembly voted to petition for the commissioning of all nuclear plants in the prefecture, Fukushima Daiichi and Fukushima Daini. And the Fukushima governor Yuhei Sato saying that this accident affected the environment, communities, education, everything. Also indicated his intent to press TEPCO and the national government to decommission the plants. Through the Fukushima District Public Prosecutor's Office, 1,324 Fukushima residents brought a suit against TEPCO. Those in the national government responsible for safe measures and others. Although the local plaintiffs have hardly even been victorious in similar lawsuits that have been brought against the nuclear plants in various parts of Japan since the 1970s. Meanwhile, there is a limit to the capabilities of the contamination, and the people of the contaminated areas are starting to realize that they will never be able to return home. 9/10 of the local governments in Japan that host nuclear plants have lost confidence in nuclear safety and come to feel that fundamental reform is needed. The experience of Fukushima taught that nuclear accidents affect a wider area, and the local government near those hosting nuclear plants have begun to demand that they have a say as well, as a conference of prefectural governors, two women governors, Yukiko Kada of Shiga Prefecture and Mieko Yoshimura of Yamagata Prefecture, called for moving from nuclear power. And majority of the governors agreed that Japan's dependence on nuclear power should be decreased and alternative energy source developed. Seeing as how an accident at the Oi nuclear power station in Fukui Prefecture would also spread radioactive contamination to Shiga Prefecture, Governor Kada joined the governor of Kyoto Prefecture and others to oppose the restarting of this plant. In April 2012, a group of mayors advocating both building communities without dependence of nuclear power formed a network called Mayors for Nuclear Power-Free Japan. The initial members, 64 current and six former mayors from 35 prefectures, called on the national government to set out a clear roadmap for making Japan nuclear-free and declare their support of the promulgation of renewable energy. In search of less expensive power, many local governments have begun contracting with new power distribution companies that have arisen due to the deregulation. The power companies' monopolies are beginning to crumble. A movement to use renewable energy on a local level, i.e. to use a local general solar power, wind power, and small-scale hydroelectricity is growing across Japan. Some local governments have already implemented this vision. For example, the town of Kuzumaki in Iwate Prefecture is using a variety of renewable energy to generate 1.6 times its total electricity consumption. On the other hand, since the stopping of a nuclear plant has a significant economic impact on the area, there are also those in municipalities hosting stopping nuclear plants, particularly their business communities calling for their plant to be restarted. Diet members are working for a nuclear-free Japan. In late April 2011, a month and a half after the March 11 disaster, a group of Diet members from 10 parties, including members of both the ruling coalition and opposition parties, started a non-partisan working group on moving away from nuclear power and shifting more toward alternative energy. There is also pro-nuclear camps, however, primarily in the LDP, that oppose the movement away from the nuclear power. The Democratic Party has over 80 Diet members in favor of eliminating nuclear plants, but close tabs are kept on anti-nuclear effort, mainly by Diet members associated with previously mentioned Denryuk Soren. In each electoral district, there are networks associated with both the labor and the capital side of the electrical utility industry that controls the political fate of candidate. In July 2012, in protest of the Noda administration's decision to restart the Oi nuclear plant, 4 female Diet members from the ruling coalition left their respective parties to form a group called Midori no Kaze, Green Wind. The business leaders for a nuclear-free Japan. In contrast to the Keidanren chairman Hiromasa Yonekura, who is trying too hard to keep the anti-nuclear movement in check, the chairman of the board of the Jonan Shinkin Bank, Tsuyoshi Yoshiwara, is calling for Japan to abandon nuclear power altogether. The Jonan Shinkin Bank is Japan's second large credit union in terms of volume of deposit and has 85 branches in Tokyo and Kanagawa Prefecture, including Tokyo's Ota Ward, which is a center of Japan's small business craftsmanship industry. Asking why Japan must depend on something that carried the possibility of such a deadly accident. Yoshiwara is working towards the goal of reducing his company's monthly electricity use by 30%, which is a percentage of Japan's total generating capacity that comes from the nuclear plants, within 3 years, and is offering increased interest rate to people who have installed solar panels or LED lighting at home. Yoshiwara says that he is selecting the original mission of credit union, namely to build communities where everyone can live in happiness. Going further, Yoshiwara said cuttingly on the television debate program, would the member companies of the Keidanren be capable of buying up the nuclear plant and running them themselves? They advocate something continuing the use of nuclear power that they couldn't do themselves, anticipating that in the end, people of Japan will foot the bill. That's the exact opposite of the practical and the height of irresponsibility. Yoshiwara also recalled that Tetsuo Obara, a credit union industry leader for whom Yoshiwara used to work, said that credit union protect and contribute to the happiness of their communities. They are different from banks, which put profit first. Don't lower yourself to the level of banks. 銀行になり下がるな。Since the March 2011 earthquake, credit unions have in fact been fighting for their community. Yoshiwara's effort resonated with Yoshifumi Nishikawa, an honorary advisor of Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, who called them bold step, 英断である. Greatly shaken by March 11, SoftBank President Masayoshi Son, most rich person in Japan now, donated 10 billion yen of his own money and announced that he would also donate his entire executive compensation every year until retirement. Son also started a solar energy venture and to the Keidanren, which is saying that Japan's economy will not survive if Japan doesn't export nuclear power technology. He says, look at the big picture, like safe food, safe land, and safe air for Japan into the future. Don't take an industry that will become much bigger in the future and nip it in the bud. Anti-nuclear demonstration and the zero nuclear plants public sentiment. Since March 11 rallies and the demonstration calling for an end to the use of nuclear power have been held throughout Japan. A rally called Goodbye to Nuclear Power Plants was held in Tokyo of September 19th, 2011, 6 months after the disaster. And the Nobel Prize winner, author Kenzaburo Oe, said to a crowd of 60,000, we need to let the imagination-bereft leaders of the political parties and Keidanren know that we have the will to fight against the nuclear power. How can we do that? These democratic rallies and public demonstrations we have. These nuclear demonstrations formed spontaneously as word spread via internet, as word spread via internet, cell phone, email, and Twitter, rather than by organized mobilization of say labor unions or college students. Almost half of those who participated had never participated in a demonstration before. Young couples pushing strollers could also be seen. Another major anti-nuclear rally was held on July 16, 2012, with a turnout of around 170,000 people. Both that rally and the goodbye to nuclear power plants rally was followed by the marches through popular downtown areas such as Shibuya. As mentioned earlier, when the government decided in June 2012 to restart Unit 3 and 4 at the Kansai Electric Power Facilities Oi nuclear power station, protesters shouted their opposition in front of the Prime Minister's residence. In addition, it was said that 200,000 people surrounded the Diet building. They are making lots of noise. 音がする. Prime Minister Noda reportedly remarked, reminiscent of the demonstration against the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty in 1960s, and remarked by the then Prime Minister Nobusuke Kishi, who remarked during the demonstration that only those who are making noise oppose me, the silent majority, koe na hikoe, support me. And of course, Kishi Nobusuke is a grandfather of Abe Shinzo, new president of LDP. And anti-nuclear demonstration in front of the Prime Minister's residence continue, now being held every Friday evening. There have also been attempts an anti-nuclear local referenda. Signatures calling for such referenda were gathered in Tokyo Prefecture and the city of Osaka, but they were shut down by the opposition of Tokyo Governor Shintaro Ishihara, Osaka Mayor Toru Hashimoto, and the respective prefectural and city assemblies. The national government conducted a deliberative poll about Japan's future energy policy, giving the three choices for the percentage of Japan's total electric generation capacity that should come from the nuclear plants in 2030s. 0%, 50%, or 20 to 25%. The government was probably hoping that responses would shift upward over the process of deliberation, but the opposite occurred. Parallel polls were conducted at the same time by various media companies, and they also showed similar trends. The number of people answering 0% steadily increased, ending up at over 40% of respondents. In the government poll, 47% of people answered 0%, more than 3 times the population of either of the other responses, serving as a demonstration of the widespread determination to choose nuclear-free Japan, even if it means higher electricity rate. There was also an opinion poll in which 60% of the respondents gave within 10 years as a time frame within which they think Japan should go nuclear-free. The fear that Kansai Electric Power Company might experience a power shortage, which was a reason for restarting the Oi nuclear plants turned out to be unfounded. Consumers in the Kansai region worked hard to save power, resulting in lower than average power demand despite the extremely hot summer last summer. Politically, environmentalists and other liberal independent members of the local assembly joined to form the Green Party Japan, united on a platform to demand the immediate end to nuclear power use. Like other Green parties, the majority of the party was women. It also adopted a quota system plan to ensure that the majority of female candidates are included over ballot of future general election. It's a first case in Japan. Concluding remarks, a moral issue. Given the imperative state of affairs brought by the Fukushima disaster, it is highly doubtful that it would be possible to ignore the people's choice of nuclear-free Japan, the choice that affects both lives and livelihood. There is another difficult problem with the use of nuclear power, the problem of what to do with spent fuel. Japan had a P in the Sky project to process and reuse spent nuclear fuel, but 45 years, 10 trillion yen, and a series of accidents later, there remained no prospect for successful implementation. The U.S., which sold Japan on the project, has long since pulled out. Meanwhile, Japan's nuclear plants will be overflowing with accumulated spent fuel in just a few more years. Some of Japan's spent nuclear fuel is currently stored at the Rokkasho reprocessing plant in Aomori Prefecture, but its reprocessing effort were to be stopped. Aomori Prefecture would want the spent fuel returned to the respective plants from whence it came, at which point many nuclear plants would need to be stopped. This is contradiction where nuclear plants in Japan are referred to as an apartment without toilet. The British solution of the burying spent fuel under the ocean floor is of doubtful applicability to Japan, with its frequent earthquakes and the possibility of violent undersea upheaval. There is even an irresponsible proposal to bury spent fuel in the Mongolian desert. Furthermore, the reprocessing spent nuclear fuel yield plutonium, which can also be used in the nuclear weapons. It is even said that it is in order to preserve that possibility that Japan is engaged in reprocessing. In the currently ongoing review of Japan's energy policy, the LDP has added to the discussion the contention that there is a security aspect involved. Dangerous and replete with contradictions such as myth of safety and the nuclear power village, we must heed the words of Hideki Yukawa and others who emphasize that peaceful use of nuclear power must be public, democratic, and independent. The recent nuclear accident has demonstrated the wisdom behind their words. From the point of view of the future of our society, nuclear power is a problem that goes beyond such a consideration as profit and the level of technology. Previous Fukushima Governor Eisaku Sato has said, in Japan, of all places where the disaster was brought about and the tremendous suffering inflicted on the tremendous suffering inflicted on the people of Fukushima. There is not enough debate on what to make of nuclear power from a moral standpoint. What is wrong with us using logic to debate may be just the way Japan is, but I find it thoroughly shameful. I believe that as Germany did, while debating whether to abandon nuclear power, Japan also needs to have this problem debated, not by people involved with nuclear power, but by the experts of morality, philosophy, and religion. Thank you very much.